Friends, welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like it so you won't miss new incredible stories and rare historical photos. While the First World War witnessed the development of modern technological warfare, it also made unprecedented demands on what we might see as archaic methods of campaigning. Despite the tanks, planes, and machine guns, fighting still depended on the physical and emotional suffering and sacrifice of men, who also had to contend with mud, sand, water, disease, and often brutal weather. Moreover, like fighting men since time immemorial, the armies of the Allies and the Central Powers depended on the efforts and skills of animals for transport, logistics, communications, and, at times, solace. Railways, trucks, and ships transported these munitions for much of their journey, but they also relied on hundreds of thousands of horses, donkeys, oxen, and even camels or dogs for their transport. Field guns were pulled into position by teams of 6 to 12 horses, and the dead and wounded carted away in horse-drawn ambulances. The millions of men at the front and behind the lines also had to be fed and supplied with equipment, much of which was again hauled by four-legged beasts of burden. Because of the deep mud and craters at the front, much of this could only be carried by mules or horses. Even the British Army, which could boast that it was the most mechanized of the belligerent forces, relied largely on horsepower for its transport, much of it organized by the Army Service Corps. By November 1918, the British Army had almost 500,000 horses, which helped to distribute 34,000 tons of meat and 45,000 tons of bread each month. The animals themselves needed feeding and watering, and British horses had to carry some 16,000 tons of forage each month. In total, perhaps 6 million horses were engaged by all sides. Looking after these animals were specially trained soldiers who knew how to care for such beasts from their jobs before the war, and who were also trained in modern methods of animal husbandry, although the level of training varied from army to army. The resupply of horses and other animals was a major concern for the leadership of all sides. At the outbreak of the war, Britain's horse population stood at under 25,000, and so it turned to the United States, which supplied around 1 million horses during the war, Canada, and Argentina. Germany had prepared for war with an extensive breeding and registration program, and at the start of the war, had a ratio of 1 horse to every 3 men. As well as acting as beasts of burden or participants in the fighting, animals also played a vital role in communication. Trained dogs were used to carry messages from the front lines, especially by the German forces, and both sides made particularly heavy use of pigeons. Trained birds, which could fly at 40 kph or faster, relayed messages back from the front lines to headquarters, often more reliably or securely than telecommunications or radio. Naval ships, submarines, and military airplanes routinely carried several pigeons to deploy in case of sinking or a crash landing. Mobile homing pigeon units acted as communication hubs, and in Britain, pigeon fanciers assisted in breeding and training for the war effort. The French deployed some 72 pigeon lofts. Pigeons also captured the popular imagination, with one American bird, Cher Army, awarded a French medal for her service within the American sector near the town of Verdun. On her last mission, she successfully carried her message, despite being shot through the chest, and purportedly saved the lives of 194 American soldiers with her news. Animals also served important psychological functions during the war. The military had long had a close association with animals, either as symbols of courage, such as lions, or through the image of the warrior and his horse. Friends, thank you for watching and offer to discuss what you see in the comments. See you soon on the channel.